It's time to get in the game.
Get in the game.
What's up, team? Welcome back to another episode of the Get in the Game podcast, the podcast where we explore ways to get off the sideline, stop making excuses, and get in the game. I'm your coach, Trevor Dean, and today we're going to be talking about learning. But before we get into that, please like and subscribe to our YouTube and our podcast channels, and also hit us up on social media. You can find all the links there at our website, www.getinthegamepc.com. That's all the social media, YouTube. The videos are on there, but they're a link to YouTube, and also all of our podcast channels are popular ones on there as well. Or you could just hit us up on our email at getinthegamepodcast@gmail.com. And right there, we'd love to hear from you. You can have prayer requests, praises, suggestions, etc. Like I said, we'd love to hear from you. So with that being said, now on to today's subject, learning. Well, there are many types of learning. There's research, there is reading, visual, audio, mentorship, when someone kind of comes along side you and kind of teaches you what they know. And there's also experience, or like on-the-job training, that's how I like to say it. But these are by no means an exhaustive list of all the different ways that people learn. So with that, I'm just going to touch on some of the things that I've been thinking about and I've experienced this week, especially. And that's kind of why I am talking about it, is because I've had a lot of learning I've had to do for things that I'm interested in and things that have been helping me in some of the different jobs and roles that I have as I live. So the first one I'm going to be talking about is research. And see, when I first hear the word research, I think of writing papers and essays and all that painstaking effort and search that went to finding relevant sources in order to prove or disprove a hypothesis. And I know that's a lot, but that's kind of how I thought about it back in high school and college, and even maybe as far back as junior high in some ways. But having to research different subjects, different sources, and find that stuff to prove your point or disprove someone else's point. And though it's a relevant topic to this, it's relevant to the topic, I feel like I never quite learned as much as I could, or that I do learn when I don't have a hypothesis or a point that I'm trying to prove. I always felt that I was like less objective than I should have been when I had to write those kind of essays and papers. However, when I don't know anything about something, but I just want to know about it, or I need to find out a way to do it, I have to find info on it. And so in this last week, I've really been trying to dive further into trying to make this podcast sound better. And though there might not have been any real big problems or any major complaints by anyone, I just felt like there was an easier way to do things. The setup I have is really user-friendly, and it has a lot of good ways to make sure that your sounds as good as possible without a lot of editing afterwards you're done and having to clean up sounds and everything. And to me right now, listening to it in my own headphones, it sounds a lot better. But I literally went through 10, 20 hours of different people trying to explain why their sound, with the same setups I have, sounds the way it does. And every time I hear it and they say that they didn't do any editing afterwards, it sounded just amazing. And for me, I'm just like, man, there's so much that I have to do. There's a lot of hissing and there's all this other stuff that I have to edit out on the backside of it after I'm done recording. And it just takes so long. And so again, I went on YouTube and found different people telling me how to do it, how to use the equipment. And then I wrote down different presets and all this other stuff. Just a lot of different people telling me how it should work. But the thing that every single one of them said was, but at the same time, you have to do what's good for you. You have to do what sounds best for you. And so none of those things that people told me sounded right until honestly today, I went on and I was messing with stuff, and I was at the point where I was like, I just want to go back to what I had before because I know how to do the editing and all that stuff. And I couldn't remember all the presets and stuff that I had for last week's episode and every episode I've done before that. And so I was starting to freak out a little bit. And then I remembered one other like section I could preset. And I tell you what, as soon as I used it and tweaked a couple things, it sounded so much better to me. And I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm not saying that it might not even sound the way that you think it should. But in my own ears, listening to it and then listening to it, the playback sounded so much better. So I should have to do a lot less editing after I'm done recording. But the point of the whole thing is that I had to go on, and if this is something that I wanted to do, something that I had committed myself to bringing to you, I want to do it the best way I can. And I have to research how to do it because there's a lot of people out there who know a lot more than me. There's a lot of info out, and sometimes you can get caught in a rabbit hole with YouTube and social media and stuff like that. But this is one of those little rabbit holes that I was glad to stumble upon and to go through because it taught me a lot of sometimes less is more, which is the whole way I got to the point that I feel fits with my voice, fits with the equipment I'm using, and I'm happy with the sound. And like I'm gonna try to like not really do any kind of effects on this, and hopefully it sounds great to you guys. But I'd love to hear from you. Let me know. Refer back to the beginning of this with our email and social media and everything. But another one that I've done that's kind of more fun, even though podcasting is great and I love it. I've kind of gotten into minor woodworking projects here and there over the last couple of years. And to tell you the truth, my woodworking experience prior to that is very, very limited. And so I didn't know much. I didn't know what tools, what things to buy to make it to where I could do the things I want to with a fairly relative amount of ease, and hopefully wouldn't break the bank as well. So I had to do a lot of the same type of research I did for the podcasting about woodworking as well. And I don't know a lot of people who do a lot of woodworking. I don't know a lot of people that I know certain people who are handy, but in terms of just specific woodworking, didn't know a lot of people to really hit up. So I just reverted to, like I said, like YouTube, seeing the type of tools people use, what's best for them, for someone who's kind of in the same ballpark, probably a little bit more experienced than I am, but like what they did when they got started and what they were able to make with it. And it was very encouraging. And so research in that way, that's kind of the way I'm talking about this, is getting into that kind of research and really finding out how to do something so then you're able to take whatever is best for you, experiment a little bit, and then run with it. And that's kind of what I've done with podcasting, and I hope to do a little bit more with the woodworking in the future. The second type of learning is mentorship. And some of the first mentors we have in life are our parents or guardians. For the most part, these are literally using, these people, are literally using everything that they know up to the point of your existence, to the point of you kind of came into their lives in the best way possible to raise you and teach you things from their experiences and their life, what they know is good for them and good for you. Hopefully they teach you that, and they kind of, obviously, as a baby, we have no choice but we need someone to come alongside us and teach us all these things. Teach us how to read, write, how to eat, all these things, how to go to the bathroom. Potty training is crazy. And I don't have kids, but I have many nieces and nephews, and I know that it's a process, and I know it takes a lot of patience and a lot of resolve and reserve for those parents. So, but the children need mentorship in that and how to do these things. And the same is true as we grow up. Whether it's being an athlete and you need a coach to tell you what to do, their whole purpose, if they're a good coach, their whole purpose is to teach you how to do things at an efficient level. From their experience, knowing what they've been taught themselves, the experience they have in that sport and coaching, and then relaying it to you to make you the most proficient and successful athlete that they can. That would be a good coach. And in the meantime, also teach you things about life and how to work with teams and how to work with other people and be respectful. Those are also things that you learn in a sport, or that you should be learning in a sport, that a coach might not just be specifically harping on, but they are teaching you the dynamics of how to work with groups and work with people and stuff. And that's a good way to learn. And there's many different facets, coaching. It could be professionally, personally, or even spiritually. And I've definitely had mentors in all three of these categories. And for me as a coach, the coaches I've worked with, and I've primarily worked with one, but I have worked with others, but the experience that they had before me, I've taken as much as I can to be the type of coach that I want to be today. And not only that, I've had mentors in other areas of life that have influenced my professional, coaching career. And that's kind of how I got to this point now, is that, at a certain point in my coaching that I've mentioned before in other podcasts, that I took my faith and spirit and the coaching I've had in other areas of life and finally brought it to coaching of, who I want to be as a coach, but still using all that other experience and other mentorship that I've gotten in the realm of coaching, blend those two together, and that's who I've become as a coach. And so like I said, mentorship is so important. But spiritually, we need mentors. We need people. And if I truly believe that we need mentors, and we should also be mentors spiritually. And I think professionally and in other walks of life as well, personally, we should always have people that we're living life with and helping people with in our lives. One of the best ways you can do that is being around other Christians. And if you're looking for a mentor, you want to be around someone who's a little bit more mature in their faith than you. That doesn't necessarily mean more mature in life. That just means, and what I mean by that is someone who's older in age. I could be a brand new Christian and I could be 60 years old, but a 40-year-old Christian who's been a Christian since they were 10 has a lot more Christian experience, a lot more maturity as a Christian. Hopefully they should. And so that 40-year-old could be a spiritual mentor to that 60-year-old. So it really has nothing to do with age when it comes to this. But that 60-year-old could also be a life mentor, because they may have should have gone, most likely, through a lot more than that 40-year-old has. They at least have 20 more years on it, so they live 20 years longer than they have. So they have different experiences. And so you can learn from one another, and it could be, the roles can be flipped, but spiritually it doesn't have to be an older person mentoring a younger person. What's good about that sometimes is that older person might have more life experience and a more mature faith, and they can really speak life into someone in two ways. But it doesn't have to be that way. So I don't want to pigeonhole different people in different age groups to where they should be. Mentorship is a fluid thing, and it can be it can look many different ways. But the most important mentor we have is Jesus himself. He gave us this collection of books called the Bible, and he did that so we could follow his instruction and what he did in his life. And so what's good about that is it's not only mentorship, but it's also reading, because, as I mentioned before, I wasn't really going to harp on it too much. I was going to talk about research, but the only thing I'm going to say about reading is if we read this book, if we spend time in the Word, we're going to get that spiritual mentorship from Jesus himself, getting the info that was inspired by God about Jesus, because the whole Bible, whether it's Old Testament or New Testament, points to Jesus and points to the gospel. And if we are supposed to model our lives after Jesus, what better way than to be in the Word, reading the Bible, figuring out what Jesus has to say to us. Spending time in prayer and just meditating on the word and really thinking about it and what God has to say to us. That is the ultimate mentor. And so I encourage you, as I've done many times before, get in the Bible, make it routine, read it, live it, love it, memorize it, imprint it on your heart, and use it for your life. It's you won't regret it. And there's, find any Christian out there who's, neck deep in the word, and they will let you know that that is the best way to be in life. The last one I'm going to be talking about is experience. Kind of mentioned it a little bit before, just with like coaching and stuff like that. This is that on-the-job training and experience that is so valuable. And you can research and read and listen and watch and be trained, etc., whatever it is, as much as you want. But until you actually get out there and do it or act on it, you're never going to know exactly, what works for you. All that learning that you got is, it's from the, when people wrote it or created it, whoever it was who did it, it was just their own experience. It was in how it worked for them. And they, wrote it down or created it or whatever it may be, to best tell you, in the best way they can, how to do something or information about whatever it may be. And they just hope that it works for you. And so getting out there and really spending time doing whatever it is, whatever you're going to be doing, whether in the examples I use, it's coaching or podcasting or woodworking. And these are actions, obviously. It's not just learning about a lot of stuff, but it could be, like I said, reading the Bible, getting in there, reading, learning about who God is and why he sent Jesus to die for us, and that Jesus is the Son of God, and that he died for us and he rose again on the third day, so that we could be reconciled with God, because we're a sinful people. And the only way we can be righteous in the eyes of God is through the free gift of salvation through the blood of Jesus Christ, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's the only way we can be reconciled and be seen as righteous in God's eyes, is through him. And I wouldn't know that unless I read and learned about it. So if you're going to learn, if you really want to get that mentorship, you want to get that relationship, this could be learning about other people in life too, is relationships. How do you do that? You spend time with those people. You have an experience with them. You have conversation. Sometimes conversations go good, sometimes they go bad. And no matter what, you're learning how to interact with those people. The Bible is no different. You learn how to interact with God through what he tells you, through your prayer life, through your actions, how you worship. And worship doesn't just have to be music and singing. It could be the way you work. The whole anchor verse of our podcast is Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men. So you're doing it for God anyway. And so if you're given everything you can to learning in relationships, or a task or a skill or a hobby, you do need to learn how to do it. So the only, like I said, it's the way we experience things. And so you got to get out and do it. And you're never going to get that kind of experience unless you're doing it. The only exception about the way something works for you is Jesus. He knows exactly what he's telling you. So it's not like this may work for you. He knows it will work for you. So what he's telling us in this Bible is truth. And that's how we should fall on it, how we need to treat it. But the beauty of it is that he also is the author of the purpose. He has a different purpose for all of us. And so even though the outcome is true, and how we should treat people and how we need to be praying and how we need to be loving people is the same in terms of the spirit behind it, he has different ways that we accomplish that. Like the way that I am trying to tell you about the word and the gospel and trying to get the word of Jesus out there is through this podcast or through FCA. But that's not the same as a pastor, or it's not the same as a doctor who's got a belief in Jesus. It's not everyone has their own vocation, so he knows what purpose he has for you. But it all falls in line with the truth of what he's telling you. So he expects us to learn in different ways. There are different types of ways I learn. I learn sometimes, really well through listening. Sometimes I'm a total visual learner. I tell people to this day that when it came, the first sport I learned how to play, like I feel like fairly proficiently, even though I was young doing it, was baseball. And that was because I got so much instruction, because every movement in it was new. How to throw a ball, how to catch, how to swing a bat. All those things was new. The hand-eye coordination was completely new. But when I learned how to play volleyball, 5 or 6 or 7 years later, however old I was, and I don't even quite know how old I was when I first learned baseball, but I know when I started playing volleyball in the 5th grade, and I tell other coaches this, I tell certain older players of mine when I would coach, is I was a very good imitator by like 5th grade. I was fairly athletic, but I didn't need a lot of technical breakdown of the movements. I just needed to be shown how to do it, and I could kind of do it. But in baseball, when I was younger, I needed the breakdown of each step by step, and then over time, it becomes more fluid and more natural. And so sometimes I'm auditory, sometimes I'm visual, sometimes it is mentorship and knowing what someone else has gone through. That way I don't have to go through it. Or sometimes it's just my own experience, and I have to get out there and do it and make bad choices or good choices or whatever it is and see what works for me. But he uses that. Jesus uses all of that, the way we learn and hold on to that info. And he expects us to apply those things to what we've learned about him and continue to learn about Jesus, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. So experience is huge. God uses our experiences to glorify him if we have the right heart and the right mindset to do it. So I urge you to take what you are learning and put it into your ministry. And your ministry is just what you do. It is the way you treat people. It's the job you go to. It's the people you're around, how you treat them, how you love them. That is your ministry. And if your ministry is something you're paid for, if it's just something that you do, I urge you to glorify God in all of it. As Colossians 3:23 says, do it for God, do it for the Lord. Don't do it for other people. And that means those other people, that includes you. So do it for God. That's an act of worship. And I guarantee you're going to be learning crazy things if you just apply it in that way. So my challenge to you this week is to get out there and learn something new this week. And it doesn't have to be on something completely new. Maybe it's something that you've been foggy on in a certain subject that you've already been familiar with. But go learn and then use that information to get off the sidelines. That's what this whole podcast is about. All right, that's all I have this week. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get off the sidelines, stop making excuses, and get in the game. See you next week. Peace.
Get in the game.
Thank you for listening to the Get in the Game podcast. Please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. That's the best way to support us. Find us on YouTube and subscribe for more content. If you would like for us to pray for you, or if you have topics that you would like us to tackle in upcoming episodes, email us at getinthegamepodcast@gmail.com. That's getinthegamepodcast@gmail.com. Or hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at getinthegamepc. If you've experienced getting off the sidelines and getting into the game yourself, please let us know. And remember, it's time to get in the game.